Jen, in that news conference was about the strike on the girls' school that's next to a base in Iran, and it was a Tomahawk missile. The president saying Tomahawks are used by other countries, but an investigation is ongoing. What do we know about where that stands?
Well, that was a bit surprising to me because basically the U.S. has Tomahawks. Tomahawks have to be fired from either submarines or from warships. The Brits and the Australians have Tomahawks, but they're not part of this conflict. And then you also have the Japanese who are in a testing phase. So it seems highly unlikely that it would be anyone's Tomahawk other than a U.S. Tomahawk that hit that school. And I think the president knows that. He just knows that this is certainly a mistake, a big mistake, and it's being investigated, but he's trying to sort of muddy the waters by talking about the Tomahawks.
Yeah, they were saying that they didn't believe it was theirs, or they believed that Iran misfired something. Are we sure that it was a Tomahawk that hit that school?
There's no evidence that the Iranians fired anything at this school. If you look at the satellite imageries, and there have been a lot of investigations from the air, from these satellite photos, showing the impact and showing the likelihood that it was a Tomahawk.
Last thing, what struck you from that news conference?
I think what struck me is, are the Israelis and the U.S. on the same page about feeling that they're almost close to the end of this operation? My sense is that they are on different time frames. The Israelis all along have been focusing more on regime change, and they're very far from that point at this point, because you still have, while 2 and 3 layers of leaders have been removed, there is still a pretty strong layer that's still there with Ali Larijani in charge. He is a brutal leader, as well as this new supreme leader, even if he's injured. So I think that's one thing. Also, we really don't have an answer for the nuclear program. So far, the military strikes, the U.S. strikes and the Israeli strikes, really haven't touched the nuclear site that he was referring to that was being rebuilt. And we know that from the IAEA head Grossi today that about 220 kilograms or 400 pounds of highly enriched uranium is likely still at Isfahan. We have not heard any plan for how they're planning to go get that, or work with the regime, who I doubt they could work with at this point, to go in and dilute that highly enriched uranium.
Yeah, complex questions and issues. Jen, thanks.
Conferences around Florida. Let's get right to it.
And I'd like to wish everyone a very good evening. And over the weekend, the United States military and the Israeli Defense Forces continued Operation Epic Fury very successfully. Over the past 9 days, we've carried out some of the most powerful and complex military strikes and maneuvers the world has ever seen. Now, you add that up to all of the other things, Midnight Hammer, getting rid of the nuclear threat from Iran, which was a big moment in history, in my opinion, and the great success we've had in Venezuela and all other places. Every place we've gone, we've had tremendous success. But while we're doing all of these things, we're achieving major strides toward completing our military objective. And some people could say they're pretty well complete. We've wiped every single force in Iran out very completely. Most of Iran's naval power has been sunk. It's on the bottom of the sea. It's almost 50 ships. I was just notified it's 51 ships. I didn't know they had that many. Didn't last very long. And these are fighting vessels. They're meant to fight, but they're not meant to fight against us. We continue to target Iran's drone and missile capabilities. Their drones are way down. Their drone manufacturing's been hit starting today. We know all of the places they manufacture the drones, and they're being hit one after another. Their missile capability is down to about 10%, maybe less. We're also hitting where they make missiles and where they deliver missiles. We've struck over 5,000 targets to date, some of them very major targets, and we've left some of the most important targets for later in case we need to do it. If we hit them, it's going to take many years for them to be rebuilt, having to do with electricity production and many other things. So we're not looking to do that if we don't have to. But they're the kind of things that are very easy to hit, but very devastating if they are hit. We are waiting to see what happens before we hit them. We could take them all out in one day, but it's all resulting in a 90% decline in various things, but in particular, Iranian missile launchers and 83% drop in drone launchers. As you know, the drone launchers are pretty well shot, but we're at over 90% decline in the Iranian missile launchers, which is very hard to reproduce and very hard to get. And usually what we were able to do through great equipment, a lot of smart people, as soon as they sent a missile up from a launcher, we were able to knock out that launcher within a period of 5 minutes or less, accurately right on the noggin. So now we have low-cost interceptors effectively combating Iranian drones, and our B-2 bombers recently dropped dozens of 2,000-pound bombs to destroy missile launchers all over Iran and buried deep under Iranian soil in many cases. The soil was no match. And we're also annihilating the manufacturing base that the regime uses to build drones and missiles at a rate that nobody thought was possible. We're knocking them out. We know where they all are. We're knocking them out very quickly. We're ahead of our initial timeline by a lot. I would say that we probably would not have thought after a month we'd be here. In addition to the fact that we've taken out the leadership twice and maybe 3 times. And we, as you know, we want to be involved. We don't want another president that maybe wouldn't be willing to do what I'm willing to do for the good of the world, for the good of our nation, to be stuck with the situation in 5 years or 10 years from now. So we think they should put a president in, or the head of the country in, that's going to be able to do something peacefully for a change. They've been doing this for 47 years, killing people for 47 years, whether it's the barracks or even the SS Cole, where they were involved very strongly. They always denied it. But where they were very strongly involved, and all of the people that died through the roadside bombs died and are right now walking around with no legs, no arms, a face that's been so badly damaged. The Iranian regime has been attacking Americans and spreading terror for 47 years, and despite these countless opportunities to renounce their nuclear ambitions, which they had just a short while ago, they told Mr. Witkoff, who is standing right over here, they said, they actually said, we want to keep building. Essentially, in a real nutshell, we want to continue to build nuclear weapons. If we didn't knock out Midnight Hammer, if we didn't knock out their Iranian potential, if we didn't do that with Midnight Hammer, they would have had a nuclear weapon. They would have used it long before now. And at a minimum, Israel would have been annihilated. I was very lucky that we had the courage to do that, that we had the talented pilots and the great equipment. The B-2 bombers are unbelievable. We ordered 25 more, by the way. The newer, better version. It's we have the greatest military in the world. We have the greatest equipment in the world by far. You see that no matter where we go. You still need the people, though, to operate it and to use it. And those are the people that we cherish. Even after we obliterated their key nuclear sites in Operation Midnight Hammer, they never negotiated in good faith. They still continued to say, we want to build nuclear. We want enrichment at levels that were unacceptable. And they even turned down an offer for unlimited free nuclear fuel forever for civilian purposes. We had people offering them free nuclear fuel. They weren't interested in that because they wanted to build a nuclear weapon. So instead, the regime was trying to reconstitute its weapons program at a different site. They couldn't go back to where they were, the 3 sites that we obliterated, but they were starting work at another site, a different site, different kind of a site. And that was protected by granite. They wanted it protected. Granite's pretty good, but they wanted it protected by a lot deeper. They wanted to go a lot deeper, and they started the process while rapidly building conventional ballistic missiles. They were going to do it all at the same time. It threatened our overseas bases and soon could have reached even our homeland. The regime's intention was to use this exponentially growing ballistic missile threat to make it virtually impossible to prevent them from obtaining a nuclear weapon. So as you probably saw, they had a tremendous number, most of which are now being used or destroyed, and very unsuccessfully used, because we have been able, for the most part, to shoot them all down. What incredible technology. The Patriots have been unbelievable, and other things. And the laser technology that we have now is incredible. It's coming out pretty soon. Where literally lasers will do the work of, at a lot less cost, do the work of what the Patriots are doing or what other things are doing. The situation was very quickly approaching the point of no return, and the United States found it intolerable, in my opinion, based on what Steve and Jared and Pete and others were telling me, Marco, so involved, that I thought that they were going to attack us. I thought they would, if we didn't do this at the time we did it, I think they had in mind to attack us. And if you notice, they did something which was very foolish, very stupid, I would say. They attacked their neighbors. And their neighbors were largely neutral, or at least weren't going to be involved, and they got attacked. And it had the reverse effect. The neighbors came onto our side and started attacking them, and actually quite successfully. If you look at Saudi Arabia, you look at UAE, Qatar, and others, but they were strong and they were smart, but they got attacked. Nobody, when I first heard it, I said, no, somebody made a mistake. There was no mistake. UAE had over 1,000 missiles shot at it, knocked them almost all down. On the very first day I came down the escalator in 2015, I said, quote, I will stop Iran from getting nuclear weapons, and all I'm doing is keeping my promise. Think of that. That was in 2015. I said it. It was a threat then, and a much bigger threat now, but no longer a threat, not for a long time anyway. We want to keep it that way. As we continue Operation Epic Fury, we're also focused on keeping energy and oil flowing to the world, and I will not allow a terrorist regime to hold the world hostage and attempt to stop the globe's oil supply. And if Iran does anything to do that, they'll get hit at a much, much harder level. I will take out those targets that were easy and that I mentioned just before. We'll take them out so quickly, they'll never be able to recover, ever. If they want to play that game, they better not play that game. In the long run, oil supplies will be dramatically more secure without the threat of Iranian ships, drones, missiles, nuclear menace, or anything. So the Strait of Hormuz is going to remain safe. We have a lot of Navy ships there. We have the best equipment in the world, inspecting for mines. Again, most of their ships are down at the bottom of the sea, but we will hit them so hard that it will not be possible for them or anybody else helping them to ever recover that section of the world if they do anything. In recent years, the regime and its terror proxies have launched attacks on hundreds of commercial vessels. We're putting an end to all of this threat once and for all, and the result will be lower oil prices, oil and gas prices for American families. We've done that. We've done it. We brought it very low. This was just an excursion into something that had to be done. We're getting very close to finishing that, too. In the meantime, during this brief disruption, the United States is offering political risk insurance to any tankers operating in the Gulf. So we're putting up risk insurance. We'll perhaps go alongside of them for protection. We don't think it'll be necessary if it is. And if they do anything, the price will be incalculable. It will be so great that they will have wished they never did it, because you have to keep the straits flowing. With all of that, it affects other countries much more than it does the United States. It doesn't really affect us. We have so much oil. We have tremendous oil and gas, much more than we need. We have Venezuela now as our new partner, great partner. They've worked out so wonderful. We're working with the administration, the president, and it's a massive source of oil, gas, everything. But we're in a very good position, but very unfair to other parts of the world, like China as an example. I mean, we're doing this for the other parts of the world, including countries like China. They get a lot of their oil through the straits. So we're doing this. We have a very good relationship with President Xi in China. I'm going there in a short period of time, and we're protecting the world from what these lunatics are trying to do, and very successfully, I might add. We're also waiving certain oil-related sanctions to reduce prices. So we have sanctions on some countries. We're going to take those sanctions off till this straightens out. Then who knows, maybe we won't have to put them on. There'll be so much peace. But when the time comes, the U.S. Navy and its partners will escort tankers through the strait if needed. I hope it's not going to be needed, but if it's needed, we'll escort them right through. And we have the greatest mine-sweeping ability. We have the greatest ships, and all of we know exactly where they're placed. We'll get them out of there very fast, but we hope we don't have any of that. And again, if they do that, if they play that game, we're going to hit them at a level that they have not seen before. So we're winning very decisively. We're way ahead of schedule. Our military is the greatest in the world, with the greatest equipment and the greatest people in the world. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. Iran's a very powerful country. They were going to take over the Middle East. If we did not hit them, they were going to take over the Middle East. They had thousands and thousands. Since their last hit, they had thousands and thousands of missiles and everything else. Most are now destroyed. But they were going to take over the Middle East. Those weapons were aimed at Middle Eastern countries that had nothing to do with this. They were going to take over the Middle East, and they were going to try and destroy Israel. So we stopped it with good timing, and we're very proud to be involved in this, and it's going to be ended soon. And if it starts up again, they'll be hit even harder. Thank you very much for being.
Let's bring in Fox News chief political analyst Britt Hume. We'll start there with Britt. Britt, good evening. Your thoughts on this news conference where the president is clearly optimistic about where the military operation is and maybe sees a light at the end of the tunnel here.
Yeah, I think that's right, Brett. And I think his confidence is based obviously on what he's hearing from the commanders over there, that the mission is ahead of schedule, that they did far more in the first few days to wipe out Iran's retaliatory capacity than they expected they might be able to, and that there's not a lot left over there to menace us. That raises, then of course you get to the question of oil prices, which are a tangible and widely felt consequence of this conflict that American people feel very keenly every day. And obviously they're eager to get that under control if they can. And I think that the fact here is that it's not the Iranian military that's keeping the Straits of Hormuz closed. It's the worry that the ship insurers have about crossing the Straits of Hormuz and what might happen there in the midst of conflict. Once this subsides a bit, the U.S. military presumably would be able to offer escorts if needed. The president didn't seem to think they might even be needed. But we're not in a situation where there's a massive oil shock worldwide. I think he's right to assess this as a short-term fact of life owing to the uncertainty created by the conflict. But it is something he has to deal with because this is oil prices are politically exceedingly sensitive.
Well, it's untenable for the long term. He said it's going to be a short-term situation. Let's play a soundbite. This is the president on the threat and surrounding oil prices.
We're putting an end to all of this threat once and for all, and the result will be lower oil prices, oil and gas prices for American families. We've done that. We've done it. We brought it very low. This was just an excursion into something that had to be done.
Saying it had to be done. We've watched oil prices, obviously, Britt, skyrocket. But all along, the president has said that is going to be short term. He's suggesting, and there you see the average gas price that we've seen go up just in recent days. He's suggesting that this is all going to wrap up sooner rather than later.
He certainly suggested that, Brett, and he said, I believe at one point he said we could stop it now if we wanted to, but there's apparently a bit more to do over there. It's worth remembering, by the way, when we're concerned about oil prices, that the one country on earth that can least afford to have the Strait of Hormuz closed is Iran itself. 90% of Iran's oil exports, which are absolutely vital to that economy, pass through those straits. They have a pipeline that goes out to the east, but it ships only a small percentage, and so they need those. They need the Strait of Hormuz to be open themselves, and so does most of the rest of the world. I think it's reasonable to suggest that before too long that's going to happen.
All right, Britt, stand by.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dana Perino, along with Kennedy, Harold Ford Jr., Jesse Waters, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. Happening right now, President Trump is speaking at the House Republican Conference's member retreat in Doral, Florida. And later this hour, he will be holding a news conference where I'm sure he will talk about the latest in Operation Epic Fury. He just told CBS in a phone interview this: "I think the war is very complete, pretty much. They have no Navy, no communications. They've got no Air Force." He added that the U.S. is very far ahead of his initial 4 to 5 week estimated time frame. The president says he has someone in mind to replace the new supreme leader, but he did not elaborate. Iran just selected the son of their slain former supreme leader. Over the weekend, the president was making clear the terror regime only has one option.
I said unconditional, not conditional. I said unconditional. It's where they cry uncle, or when they can't fight any longer and there's nobody around to cry uncle. That could happen too, because we've wiped out their leadership numerous times already. So it's if they surrender, or if there is nobody around to surrender, but they're rendered useless in terms of military.
This as Democrats and many in the media ramping up their criticisms of Epic Fury, with some folks accusing the president of being drunk on power.
This is Wilsonian adventurism at its very worst, something that conservatives, real conservatives like me, have long feared and loathed. Sort of drunk on power, this sort of drunk on militarism always leads to disaster.
If you support the troops, then you should be voting against funding this war.
The president has not even tried to convince the American people.
And now listen to the president from just moments ago.
Doing really well. I mean, at a level that nobody thought. We took a little excursion because we felt we had to do that to get rid of some evil. And I think you'll see it's going to be a short-term excursion. How good is our military, right? Amazing. How good? Short-term. Short-term.
I mean, you would like to think, Jesse, that everybody could agree that our military is extraordinary.
Of course. Afghanistan was a 20-year war. We are now in day 8 of this operation. He says it's ahead of schedule because they have very little Air Force or Navy left, and the missile launches and drone launches are down 90%. Has the regime collapsed yet? No, and that was part of the strategy going in. The deputy commanders were given full authority that if their bosses were killed, they could continue to wage war independently. So that's what you're seeing here, and those deputies obviously are going to have to be dealt with. Also, someone who has to be dealt with is the son of the Ayatollah. And once he is dealt with, I think that will hopefully send a message to the regime remnants that there's a new reality and they're going to have to give up their ambitions. But the big question is, Dana, will a militant, theocratic police state that's been ruled by clerics and militia and army for 40 years all of a sudden change their stripes under pressure? I think we're about to find out, but they are losing the war very badly. So now they're waging an economic war, and they're starting to hit Arab oil infrastructure, and they hit a few tankers. So they've closed the strait effectively. A couple cargo ships are going through, but not enough. So the president is very sensitive to the price of oil. He's gotten the Europeans to signal that they may release some of their reserves, but I don't think you're going to see oil at 150 or 200. That would be a catastrophe. And right now, it looked like it was up over 110, and it then closed below 90, and the market rallied. So I think you'll hear from the president at 5:30 when he speaks to the country that message, that we are way ahead of schedule. He's got a control of the world energy oil market, and we should be hopefully wrapping this operation up very soon. I hope he's right. You never know.
Harold, what are you thinking today?
It's good to be back. I think Jesse is largely right. I would say the president took a hard look at the economic the strategy pursued by the Iranians, which, to Jesse's point, was largely to impart economic pain on us and the world. Even though we in the United States don't use as much oil as we did 20 years ago or 40 years ago, and our economy, as I tried to say last week, has grown considerably over the last 50 years, but our consumption of oil has not, for a variety of good reasons. Oil is a global commodity, so it's affecting global markets. And in addition, it affects us because of the reverberations it has in the transportation and agricultural sector. So everything we consume or eat, everything we need to live, oil is impacted, oil price is impacted by that. And I think the president saw that today. So I'm glad he pursued the off-ramp. The question for me will be sort of twofold here in the next several days. First is we have to pursue the off-ramp, and it sounds like the president, who is moved by the markets and numbers as much as any president in recent memory, sees that. How does Israel react and respond to this? And two, how does Europe react? Remember, the reverberations with the oil market are not just one day. You can't flip a light switch off and flip it on and expect this infrastructure and its ecosystem just to turn back on. It'll take a little time. I think about what may happen in the Middle East. Dubai has been a haven for economic innovation, for progress, and for safety. You have to wonder over the next several months, and I hope they get back there, the next few months and next several years, does that economic hub in Saudi and the UAE, how are they able to reclaim the credibility that they had prior to this war? And finally, I hope Congress does take an account of this, because we need to understand where we are, how much progress we made. It sounds like we hit a lot of targets. If the president's right, we depleted their military, but we thought we had depleted the nuclear capabilities back in June. So I just hope we are accountable and honest about it. And that way, moving forward, we can have the right munitions and right strategy.
Setting Harold aside, Kennedy, it is a little amusing to see Democrats be throwing a bit of a hissy fit over gas prices, because when it was Biden's administration, do you remember the Putin price hike?
Oh, no,
that was that over and over again.
Yes.
It wasn't Biden's fault and the Inflation Reduction Act. It was Putin's fault.
Yes, and there was nothing wrong with it. In fact, high gas prices were great for ultra-progressives because it just allowed them to force their green agenda down the country's throat. It's very interesting that the Democrat Party is sort of remoderating as the anti-war party because they had become so hawkish for so long. But what I always worry about here are the unintended consequences, like the price of gas, like the price of oil. We don't know how long the war is going to be. And, you know, Pete Hegseth took some incoming for going on 60 Minutes and saying, we're not going to telegraph exactly what we're doing. We're not going to tell you if there's going to be a ground invasion, because there has to be an element of unpredictability. I don't blame him for that. What I worry about are the things that we don't see coming, the things that are not anticipatable, and the things that could really wreak havoc in the United States of America and with our economy. So I hope, to Jesse's point, I hope it's going better than expected. I hope this is done sooner than we could have imagined, but we are dealing with theocratic psychos. They don't care about their own people. They slaughtered tens of thousands of Iranians without batting an eyelash. So the fact that they are holding on for the hereafter means that they are far more dangerous than Venezuela or any other anticipatable foe.
The new guy, Khomeini's son, it's like new boss is the same as the old boss.
Oh, you know, must be thrilled. His driver. These guys,
like, let's just stay in.
Yeah, Ayatollah Jr. is going to get a lot of rain checks on his calendar. Like, I don't think I'm going to meet you for lunch this week, and can we do Zoom instead of Boom? But whoever they slot in to be in this role has to meet the approval of one person. Trump. I mean, talk about a challenge for a new hire. You got a job, and your boss can kill you at any minute. It's a lot like working here. But, you know, we worried about being fired. He's got to be worried about being fired upon. There is no verbal warning. There is no written reprimand. It's just kaboom. But if you don't interfere with the Persian Gulf or the Middle East, you stop being an a-hole, you might actually survive. Because my feeling is that the more you see about this, it's not about regime change at all. It's about neutralizing a bully. You know, Iran bullied its neighbors It bullied its people. It bullied the United States for 47 years. Finally, there's a new student at school, Trump, and he hits him hard in the face. First time anybody's ever really done that. And now they can't take lunch money from people for a long time. Of course, you want to get the bully expelled, but maybe that won't happen. If you can remove the impact of the bully, you're doing the job. I think the idea of regime change is like, oh, if that happens, it happens. But as long as we can do anything we want in the region, which was previously hampered by Iran, that's a win. You can replace Ayatollah with anything. It doesn't really matter to us. You know, I'm amazed, and Kennedy brought up the slaughter of thousands, how all the female leaders here and abroad aren't rejoicing over this, over the decapitation of the most brutal, misogynistic regime you've ever seen. They executed women over what they wore and what they said. Trump has done more for women's rights than, I don't know, Planned Parenthood, Michelle Obama, and Hillary combined, and they don't say a thing about it.
So the story that's been on my mind all day is that during Newsroom, President Trump put out a Truth Social saying that the Australians should not send back the Iranian women's soccer team because they did not sing for the national anthem last week. So now they would get killed. So he said to the Australians, you need to offer them asylum. And I was like, I wonder if Megan Rapinoe would love to come on America's Newsroom tomorrow and say that she agrees with President Trump.
Put her in a
It would be
tight
welcome
spot.
to do that. That would be great. We hope that that ends up happening. Apparently, Australians say they are on it. We'll keep an eye on it.
Chief International Correspondent Steve Harrigan live at the Armenia-Iran border. Hi, Steve.
Martha, we've seen some real orchestrated scenes of joy and jubilation in Iran, of course, orchestrated by the government and captured by Iran state TV, really showing crowds of people delighted with the selection of a new supreme leader. What's not being shown on state television are people shouting from their apartment windows, "Death to Mostada." Of course, we are seeing the reaction from President Trump. It's been consistent all along, saying this is not the man to lead Iran. He is a poor choice. He's not acceptable. Israel taking that even a step further, saying the new supreme leader is a legitimate target. Keep in mind, the new supreme leader's father, mother, wife, and son have already been killed in strikes. It's hard to imagine taking over supreme rule of 90 million people under such a burden. One thing his appointment has shown, though, it's a signal to the world of defiance, a signal to, an attempted signal anyway, that this Iranian government, despite all the losses, is still trying to put on a show that things are working. Martha, back to you.
Yeah, very quickly, Steve, you show these protests that the Iranian leadership is allowing to go out, which shows support in the streets for the new Khomeini, but the internet is still shut down in Iran, as far as we know. So we're not seeing the other protesters against this leadership, maybe with the exception of what you talk about from the windows above this, right?
You're right. There's really two medias, one orchestrated by the public, and when you see these images on television, you have to keep in mind this is just a fraction of the story. There's people, tens of thousands, who were killed and in large part aided by this new supreme leader. He is a hardliner darling. He was a former member of the Revolutionary Guards. He's their man, and there's a lot of people not happy, just like President Trump is not happy.
Yeah, Steve, as you point out, his family was killed in those strikes, so he survived. And Ali Larijani, who is a sort of head but not a mullah, also seems to have survived, and Pezeshkian, right? Are they the three big leaders in a few seconds here?
That's right, and there are even reports that Moshtadi was wounded as well. So it's baffling to me, the burdens and the strains he is under. He's also not very well known by many of the Iranian people who are out there cheering for him as a new leader.
Yeah.
And when they say supreme leader, they really mean it. He's in charge of everything.
Indeed. Steve Harrigan, thank you very much. All right, so we will all be watching. The president's going to hold a news conference just a short time from now. It's going to get started at 5:30 from Doral, Florida this evening. In the meantime, he has done some phone interviews with several outlets, most recently talking to CBS News' White House reporter, I should say. And in that interview with Wei Zhejiang, he said, I think the war is very complete, pretty much. They have no Navy, no communications. They've got no Air Force. He added that the U.S. is, quote, very far ahead of the initial 4 to 5 week estimated time frame. And then with that, we bring in Danny Danon, permanent representative of Israel
to the United Nations. Ambassador Dannon, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me, Mara.
Do you agree with the president's assessment that things are ahead of schedule?
Absolutely ahead of schedule. We achieved so much, mainly the health superiority. It allows us now to continue and to hammer the regime, the IRGC, and also the launchers. So there is still more to do there. There are many targets on the list, but today, once we control the air of Iran, we can do a lot, and I think that we don't see much resistance. But still, you know, for 47 years, they built a lot of terror machines in Iran, so we have more targets and more things to do there.
So the other thing that the president talked about is this, you know, actually I want to go back to that thought for a second. If you had to put a percentage on how much has been destroyed, would it be at 80%, 75% of the total 100% that has to happen to be complete, as the president says we're close to?
So President Trump is right when you look at the Navy, it's demolished. You know, the Air Force demolished. But when you look at the infrastructure itself, you know, where they produce the drones, the ballistic missiles, the nuclear sites, so there are still sites that must be addressed. But today it will be much easier for us to get there. It's safer for our pilots and for the U.S. pilots to fly over Iran. So I think the president is right that it was easier than we thought.
So with regard to what we learned in June was about 900 pounds of highly enriched uranium. And there was a lot of lack of clarity, I would say, over whether or not it was buried at Isfahan, that 900 pounds, or whether it had been moved. At one point, there were videos of trucks that were leaving the area, and the thought was that potentially they moved it. I think they suggested that they had moved it and had protected that 900 pounds. What's your understanding of where that is and how dangerous that is?
So without going into details, but we have the knowledge about what's happening in Iran. We proved it by eliminating Khamenei and many leaders the first minute we attacked Iran. So we know what's happening there. But I would say that, you know, we should look at the enriched uranium, not the high-level one that everybody speaks about, those 900 pounds. You have thousands of pounds of enriched uranium, lower levels, but very fast they can actually upgrade it. So we have to pay attention to that also. So I think we have to make sure that once we finish this operation, they don't have the capability to move forward with the nuclear campaign, with the ballistic missiles. The proxies are not there. I think we are going in the right direction, but it's not over yet.
So obviously, it's a religious fanatic war for them. If the leadership survives, and if they have the ability to crack down on people, we know Larijani is still around, and he was in charge of the slaughter of tens of thousands of people in Iran. Here's what the president said about the new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, who is the son of the one who was killed at the end of February. He said, he was asked, do you have a message for him? He said, no, I have no message for him whatsoever. And we know that in the past he's said that he's not going to recognize this leader. What do you say to that?
It's more of the same. This guy is a radical like his father was. He believed in the revolution. And you know, there is no conflict between the U.S. in Iran or Israel in Iran. We have no borders. We don't fight over resources. It's pure hate. They want to come against us. They indoctrinate against us. That's why we have to go and stop them from acquiring the nuclear bomb.
All right. Danny Danon, thank you very much, Ambassador to the UN for Israel.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. President, you've said the war is, quote, very complete, but your defense secretary says this is just the beginning. So which is it, and how long should Americans be prepared
Well, I think
for
you could
this war
say
to
it
last
both.
for?
It's the beginning. It's the beginning of building a new country, but they have no Navy, they have no Air Force, they have no anti-aircraft equipment. It's all been blown up. They have no radar, they have no telecommunications, and they have no leadership. It's all gone. So, you know, you could look at that statement. We could call it a tremendous success right now as we leave here. I could call it, or we could go further, and we're going to go further. But the big risk on that war has been over for 3 days. We wiped them out in the first 2 days. When you think about it, it's incredible. We wiped out a big Navy, very powerful Navy. You know, these were ships, these were serious ships. These were ships that you buy when you want to win battles. They're all on the bottom floor. The sailors are all running off their ships. They refuse to get on the ships. The Air Force is gone. Everything's gone. The missiles are down to a trickle. The drones are down to probably 25%, and they'll soon be down to nothing. We'll have where they manufactured the drones are under fire as we speak. They're being hit. So the rest is going to be determination as to my attitude, along with the people in the Trump administration, what we want to do. Thank you.
In focus now, Lieutenant Colonel Darren Gaub, retired Black Hawk helicopter pilot and battalion commander. This is interesting. I mean, this is a forecast, if you will, of what is on the horizon, what the potential is. And every woman is hearing that for certain. Why is this important for that message in particular?
Hey, Harris, good morning. I think that message is extraordinarily important because you've got a population of 90 million people in Iran, and at least half of them will be women who, if they could hear that, would be extremely excited for the potential for their own future. And what a comparison to see what the message is from the Israeli ambassador there to the people of Iran, compared to what the mullahs of Iran are doing with the citizen population of Iran and using them as human shields, as terrorist organizations and people of this ideology tend to do. Women to them are just considered like cattle. They're commodities that are expendable in the greater mission of what they're trying to do to destroy Israel. What a way to see the difference between these two nations.
Yeah, and he's hoping by International Women's Day next year, 2027, those women can see that justice and freedom come to fruition. Look, I want to talk about what was happening outside as our own correspondent Trey Yingst was inside taking cover, which is what the Israeli citizens and those even now in Gulf states are told to do when Iran starts firing on you. What kind of capability are we seeing in terms of diminished amounts? We know about the Navy, because we basically sank every ship they have. But what else? What are some indications that this is not going to go the way that Iran thinks it will?
Yeah, here's, I think, one of the key indications is if you were to just do a chart that showed the number of attacks, missile launches and drones, it doesn't matter which kind, happened per day since this conflict opened. That number has drastically reduced each day. And though we hear about them happening still, of course, the sheer volume and frequency of how they're happening is greatly reduced. And we're talking by a factor of sometimes greater than 4 or 5 times. That just tells you that despite the fact that they do have some command and control left able to launch them, they're simply going to run out of material before too long. And in another week, maybe even 10 days, you're going to find that they're not able to launch much of anything anymore.
And going after the oil refineries, what did you think when you saw that video that went viral within seconds?
Yeah, that's one I think we should be a little bit concerned about because it kind of goes against a bit of the message about trying not to destroy the things in Iran that might be necessary for them to rebuild their economy. Now, there may be a reason to target those specific facilities for some other reason that we're not aware of. But we've got to be very careful, Israel and the United States, to make sure that we don't do something to Iran that would reduce their ability to actually build that peaceful nation that they want and their economy to follow right behind it.
Lieutenant Colonel Gaub, good to have you. Thank you.
Thanks, Harris.
Sirens blared multiple times in Israel amid unrelenting Iranian drones and missiles. Tonight we have that story, plus additional information on the new Iranian leader. You heard the president talking about him. Correspondent Nate Foy is in Tel Aviv with the latest. Good evening, Nate.
Hey, Brett, good evening. The United States and Israel continue making progress on the battlefield. You heard the president say that the U.S. has struck 5,000 targets so far in Operation Epic Fury. But the appointment of Mujtaba Khamenei as Iran's next supreme leader may indicate that this conflict is far from finished. Take a look at the streets of Tehran today. As you can see, thousands came out to support the regime. One person there said they will resist the United States until their last drop of blood. Mojtaba reportedly may have been injured in the U.S.-Israeli strikes, but not too significantly, although Iran hasn't directly confirmed that. He is the first hereditary successor in Iran's Islamic Republic. He's a hardline Shia cleric with deep connections in the IRGC. He's expected to pursue similar policies to his father, and President Trump earlier called him an unacceptable choice. Mojtaba's appointment came hours after Israeli strikes on Iranian oil infrastructure in Tehran. Meanwhile, Iran continues launching cluster bombs at Israel, killing an 11th Israeli citizen today. Iran also wants to internationalize the cost of this war. They attacked a Bahrain oil refinery earlier. As President Trump said tonight, he's considering taking control of the Strait of Hormuz to facilitate oil shipments. This as the U.S. continues its bombing campaign. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said today that American forces are well on their way to destroying Iran's ballistic missile capabilities. And you just heard President Trump say those capabilities are down to 10%. But it does continue. Tel Aviv has come under fire several times today, and the sirens are blaring in the country's north as well as Israel continues fighting Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. Brett?
Yeah, despite the optimism, there's a lot of risk to a lot of people in the region. Nate Foy in Tel Aviv. Nate, thanks.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.